Alright guys, we are going to continue to make videos based on this video suggestions tab. I think this is like the 5th video in a row that has came from a suggestion that y'all made. As always, if you want to see something be made, the YouTube comments is not where that happens. You have to come here, so it's all organized for me, so I can quickly come here before I make a video, decide to do some research, and try to pick a topic. But today we are going to go over point guard's topic. Can we have a tight end battle like today's video? Henry versus Ingram, something like that, or Waller versus Ertz. So I thought a tight end video would have been a great idea. We haven't covered tight ends in quite a while on this channel, so let's dive into it.
That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Alright guys, the first tight end we are going to cover in this video is Noah Fant. Obviously we are going to do Noah Fant and T.J. HOCKENSON. I thought that both of these sophomore tight ends, both out of Iowa, would be the two perfect guys to discuss in this video because they are so similar with their prospect profiles, especially considering they went to the same exact school. But first off, with Noah Fant, last year's draft he was taken with the 20th overall pick. He is 6'4", 250 pounds, 22 years old, and the story with Noah Fant is he scored in about the 99th percentile in every single workout metric at the NFL Combine. I mean, this guy is one of the most athletic tight ends in the NFL. He's right there with the George Kittles of the world, and this is a guy that can really just determine the game's fate based on his athleticism. And you would think that with this great athleticism, you would kind of be missing something else on his profile, but no, he has the size, he has the athleticism, he also has the college production. So Noah Fant is one of these guys that surprisingly checks every single box. And it's even more impressive considering that he had another NFL caliber tight end on his same college team, which we rarely ever see in the history of college football for two tight ends in the same draft class to go both in the first round of the NFL draft and both of them be productive in college. But let's focus in on what Noah Fant did at the NFL level because the tight end position is actually one of the hardest positions to kind of predict from college to the NFL. They are really hard to project, and really all you have to look at is that athleticism. But if we look at Noah Fant's rookie season, remember, we look at everything in a points per game matter. I hate people who just use strictly totals, but we see him have 2.5 receptions a game, 35 yards a game, and really, he only had 3 touchdowns, and this is what kept his fantasy production down throughout the entire season. And we know that tight ends, a lot of them mainly rely on touchdowns for fantasy points. And I've said on this channel multiple times before that touchdowns out of every single fantasy category, they are the most random and the hardest to predict. So the lack of touchdowns his rookie season really does not scare me because I think touchdowns are more of a fluke than anything. Yes, there are some players like Davante Adams who are able to continually be at the top of the touchdown category year over year. But for most players, they are extremely volatile and you really can't predict how they are going to score in the touchdown category. But what's real interesting if we look at Noah Fant's rookie season is if we look at his first half of the rookie season and the second half of the rookie season, they are night and day. So in weeks 1 through 8, he actually averaged about 5.5 points a game. And this put him at tight end 32 in points per game. But if we look at his second half of his NFL rookie season, weeks 9 through 16, he averaged almost 10 points a game, so almost doubled his points per game from the first half, and this put him at tight end 14 for this span. And this is something that you really want to see with these rookie tight ends because we know that the tight end position is the hardest position to develop at because you really have to be learning 2 positions. You have to be learning how to run routes like a wide receiver, and you also have to be learning how to block like an offensive lineman. So this is why we see so many NFL tight ends not really break out until their second contract, and when they can produce as rookies or as sophomores, it's something special. But we also have to keep in mind that Noah Fant is not necessarily a traditional tight end. He is actually a tight end that's more used as a receiver, kind of like an Evan Ingram. So this is definitely useful to keep in context of his rookie production, even though we don't really care about his blocking ability as a fantasy player. I mean, it's great and everything for an NFL team if Noah Fant can go in line and can run block, but that's not going to score his fantasy points. What we want to be able to see him do is catch the ball. But let's look at some advanced statistics for Noah Fant's rookie season. And Noah Fant actually averaged 8.5 yards per target and actually had about 14% of the team's total targets in the entire season. So this is significant if we are going to try to project what Noah Fant is going to be able to do in his second season, which I think is going to be able to allow us to really accurately predict where we think his dynasty buy point should be and where his dynasty sell point should be. So we see these two statistics, and let's look at Drew Lock's split in this Denver Broncos offense in 2019, because obviously Drew Lock is going to be the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos in 2020. So Drew Lock, in his 5 games starting, he averaged about 31.5 attempts, and this accumulates to about 500 attempts over the span of 16 games. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, yeah, this volume is okay, but it's nothing special. I mean, we don't really want to invest in an offense that's only going to be throwing the ball 500 times a season. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind that when Drew Lock was starting, this offense was really without any weapons. They were getting the ball to secondary receivers like Deshaun Hamilton, Royce Freeman, Phillip Lindsay, and Emmanuel Sanders was already off the team, so they were having to actually put in Tim Patrick in there in the lineup. So let's look at how many targets these players actually got in 2019. And we see Deshaun Hamilton getting 52 targets, Royce Freeman getting 50 targets, Phillip Lindsay getting 48, Emmanuel Sanders getting 44, and Tim Patrick getting 31. So these are a lot of targets to guys that aren't necessarily premier pass catchers. So with upgraded weapons in 2020, I think it's safe to say that the Denver Broncos are going to look to throw the ball considerably more. So if we just kind of bump up Drew Lock's passes per game to about 15%, we see him actually end up with 575 targets over an entire season. And I think this is safe to say with Drew Lock going into his second season, with Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and Albert O all coming into the offense. And now let's look at if Noah Fant keeps these same advanced efficiency marks and with this new passing volume, where this would put him in 2020. So if we give Noah Fant about 16% of the team's total targets, at about 8.5 yards per target, which he saw in his rookie season, and at about a 60% catch rate, which he saw in his rookie season. And first off, I know a lot of people are going to say, Mason, you should actually be projecting Noah Fant to progress a little bit going into his sophomore season. Obviously, he's going to be a more talented player than his rookie season. And yes, I think that's fair to say. But at the same time, you always have to expect when you increase volume that the efficiency is going to decrease a little bit. So I think we can say that Noah Fant will be a better player, and the increased volume won't necessarily mean a decreased efficiency due to his upgraded talent. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we should be increasing his efficiency from his rookie season, especially considering he had a couple long breakaway plays that are hard to predict year over year. But anyway, we give Noah Fant a 16% target share, which is only 2% higher than his rookie season. We give him the same yards per target and the same catch rate. This puts him at 92 targets, 55 receptions, 782 yards, and I was just going to plug in a random TD number for Noah Fant just because I said many times before, touchdowns are so hard to predict, and I didn't really want to go crazy with the Noah Fant touchdowns. I know a lot of people expect tight ends to get 8, 9 touchdowns a season, but Noah Fant is playing in an offense that just added Melvin Gordon. They have Cortland Sutton, they have Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, Albert O. So I don't know if Noah Fant's going to be able to rack up a ton of touchdowns, so I just gave him a conservative 6 in my opinion. And this is going to put him at 10.56 points per game, which would be good for the tight end 11 in 2019. So I think this is a safe median projection that we should look at for Noah Fant. And I think it's safe to say that we can predict him to be a low-end tight end 1 in his sophomore season. But now let's jump into TJ Hockenson and see how this looks differently for him in Detroit. But TJ Hockenson coming into the NFL was a stud. I mean, obviously, this was a tight end prospect that everyone wanted to get their hands on. He was 6'5", 250 pounds, and he was actually drafted with the 8th overall pick by Detroit. He's only 22 years old, and I know a lot of people think of TJ Hockenson, they think of a blocking tight end. They don't necessarily think of an athletic tight end, yet he actually scored a 75th percentile SPARQ score, which I know SPARQ score is not everything, but at the same time, it shows that TJ Hockenson, he's not a Zach Ertz. He's actually quite athletic for what you would expect. And now let's look at what he was able to do in his rookie season, which was cut short by injuries. But in his rookie year, he averaged 2.7 receptions per game, 30 yards, and he only actually had 2 total touchdowns, which is surprising for the kind of tight end TJ Hockenson is. But we know his season ended in week 14. But what's important about looking at TJ Hockenson is, yes, we know that Matthew Stafford actually was injured in week 10 of 2019. So let's try to look at the split with Matthew Stafford versus without Matthew Stafford. So TJ Hockenson, weeks 1 through 9, actually averaged almost 8 points per game and was the tight end 16 during the stretch. But as soon as Matthew Stafford gets injured, weeks 10 through 13, so this 4-week stretch before TJ Hockenson's season ended early, he actually averaged 4.2 points per game, which was the tight end 43. So obviously we see a drastic decline without Matthew Stafford. We also have to keep in mind that this was the point of the season where the Detroit Lions were kind of packing it in. They didn't really want to go out there and get any stud prospects hurt. They just wanted to get these guys experience and weren't necessarily trying to win football games at this point. But if we look at the situation in Detroit going into 2020, right now they have Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay, obviously their top 2 passing options. And I think that these are the perfect wide receivers to be paired with TJ Hockenson's skill set. Because TJ Hockenson is going to be a guy, unlike Noah Fant, where Noah Fant's going to be stretching the field, running deep routes, and trying to pick up a lot of yards after the catch. I think TJ Hockenson's actually going to be operating closer to the line of scrimmage due to his blocking ability. So we see that the only other option really in this passing game is Danny Amendola. So being the third option on this Detroit Lions passing game is the perfect situation for TJ Hockenson. And now let's try to project what he may be able to do in 2020. So I know it's actually was quite hard for me to get some advanced efficiency marks on TJ Hockenson for 2019. I was able to get general percent target share and yards per target, but I didn't want to necessarily include his full rookie season just because a lot of it was seen without Matthew Stafford, and those weeks were quite ugly. So I'm just going to kind of project what I believe that TJ Hockenson will be able to see. I'm going to give a conservative estimate, but if we give him 15% of the team's targets at 8.3 yards per target, so this is less than what I projected for Noah Fant, but we have to keep in mind that Stafford actually has an 8.6 yards per target, which is significantly higher than most NFL quarterbacks. But at the same time, I don't think that TJ Hockenson is going to be a guy that's going downfield very often. I think he's going to be a guy that's more of a red zone weapon and more of a guy used closer to the line of scrimmage. And let's give him just a conservative 60% catch rate. And if we look at Matthew Stafford's attempts with what he was on pace for in 2019, this puts the Lions at 582 pass attempts. And if we plug in these marks for TJ Hockenson, this gives him 87 targets, 53 receptions, 722 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And I'm giving him 8 touchdowns more than Noah Fant because I know TJ Hockenson's a guy that's going to be a red zone weapon. Yes, Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones are both big body wide receivers, and they're also red zone weapons. But I believe that TJ Hockenson is going to be a guy that's going to be able to be used in the middle of the field, closer to the line of scrimmage, where Marvin Jones and Kenny Golladay are going to be more on the outside. I think this is going to make easier throws for Matthew Stafford. So with these marks, this actually gives him 10.81 points per game, and this would be good for the tight end 11 in 2019. So really extremely similar to what we saw with Noah Fant. Neither of these guys are really outliers in any way, and I think that they are just currently good values at their redraft ADP, but their dynasty ADP, I think they are smashing values. Because if we look at what this does for them, if they hit these marks in 2020, going into their third year at the NFL level, this is something that we're going to be able to project for them to have long-term career success and maybe eventually be top 5 tight ends at the NFL level. But if I'm having to pick between these two tight ends, before the NFL draft, I would have actually gone with Noah Fant. But after the addition of Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler, and Albert O to that Denver Broncos offense, I'm going to go with TJ Hockenson. Because if we look at the Detroit situation past 2020, if these two players are going to be scoring very similar points, we want to see what their 2021 situations are going to look like. And right now, Marvin Jones could be out in Detroit after this year. Damian Amendola could not even be in the NFL after this year. And this could lead to TJ Hockenson being the second option on a pass-happier offense compared to the Denver Broncos offense, where Noah Fant may be the third option there. So TJ Hockenson is my pick between these two tight ends, even though before the NFL draft, I may have leaned with Noah Fant. But thanks, guys. Really hope y'all enjoyed the video. Really hope y'all got something from it. As always, if you did, make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit the bell next to the video. That way you know when the next video comes out. But have a great day.